AC Milan, the club which for so many years was able to boast of its Champions League DNA, have been banned from taking up the place in the Europa League next season. One of the world's most famous footballing names has been on the slide for some time, but this is by some distance a new low for the Rossoneri. Wednesday's judgment by UEFA will be challenged by Milan in front of the Court of Arbitration for Sport. But the general sense is that whatever argument the club will put forth will prove futile. The spending spree last summer following the takeover, which saw Silvio Berlusconi sell up to a Chinese consortium, cost them well in excess of €170 million in transfer fees. Leonardo Bonucci was the biggest name arrival in a €42 million deal from Juventus, but the likes of Andre Silva, Hakan Calhanoglu, Lucas Biglia, Andrea Conti and Matteo Musacchio also set the back eight-figure sums. While those outgoings are in all cases spread over the course of the players' contracts and thus do not all come into account for UEFA's damning 2017-18 review, the salaries and deferred purchase costs of their existing squad members have helped to tip the figures well beyond what the European body allows. It is all a far cry from the glory days of times gone by, in which they racked up 7 European Cup titles and 11 final appearances in total. But it is not a demise which hadn't been coming for some time. Milan have been run badly for years. Berlusconi and his trusted CEO Adriano Galliani failed to adapt to a post-Calciopoli world in which Italian football lost its veneer of greatness, and then utterly lost the plot as the Rossoneri began to be cut adrift in Europe too. Just a year on from the 2009 agreement by UEFA to introduce financial fair play restrictions, Berlusconi's daughter Marina, the president of the family's Fininvest company, had told her father there were simply no more handouts available to spend on Milan. Silvio's response was to splash out on Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Robinho anyway, with Galliani lauding him publicly for such gifts. Within 2 years, Milan were forced to sell Ibrahimovic on the cheap along with star defender Thiago Silva to Paris Saint-Germain, and also ended up flogging Alexandre Pato to Corinthians for €15 million just a year after brazenly rejecting a €35 million offer from PSG. There was simply no forethought put into the transfer business anymore. Galliani had previously been crowned as the transfer king during the days when Berlusconi was running for political office and using Milan as a tool to boost his popularity. Once the handouts had disappeared and Milan were left to fund deals with the revenues alone, they were always likely to become the most high-profile of casualties in the era of FFP. As the money stopped being pumped in artificially, the product on the pitch deteriorated. When they were eliminated from the Champions League by Atletico Madrid in March 2014, it was clear that they wouldn't be back anytime soon. In 2015, Galliani attempted to defend annual losses of nearly €100 million by claiming they would have been nearly halved had they been in the Champions League and still been reliant on the income of the Fininvest company owned by the Berlusconi family, entirely missing the point of the need to achieve sustainable management. Recent years have seen a never-ending story of failed coaching appointments and underachievement on the field, but the boardroom dramas have kept ticking over too. The emergence of BT Chaubol as a potential investor in 2015 looked set to deliver some light at the end of the tunnel, but Berlusconi wasn't keen on somebody simply coming on board. What the president wanted was a complete takeover, as if it would suddenly wash away all the ills of the previous decade. As such, he glossed over the proposals of Mr. B, despite a late appeal by the Thai businessman in an exclusive interview with Goal, and decided to sell up to a group of Chinese financial brokers headed by Li Yongyong instead. But that move has proven a complete disaster to this point. Simply to complete the takeover, Li, who was an unknown in the business world until the point, had to borrow over €300 million at high interest rates from US hedge fund Elliott Management Corporation. The new owner immediately followed the Berlusconi model of pumping in millions without thinking for 1 second whether it meets the new UEFA measures. The artificial income far outweighed the raises in revenue by which the European governors judge a club's financial durability, and as such the Europa League suspension comes as no surprise. Milan are a club whose total revenue in 2016-17 was €191.7 million according to Deloitte's annual Football Money League report. It was the first time ever that they hadn't appeared in the top 20 of the list, placing 22nd in the chart for gross income. And this from a club who had been in the top 10 every year up to 2012-13. The less lucrative broadcast rights in Serie A compared to the English Premier League and others is restrictive, and something which also comes into UEFA's thinking. The fact that clubs in Italy are tied into the current TV contract for 3 more years doesn't help either, as Deloitte explained in its January report. Serie A's existing broadcast deal is in place up to and including 2020-21, and so revenue growth will depend on improved commercial and matchday performance on a club-by-club basis. Unfortunately, the picture continues to look bleak for Italian clubs in the Money League. Milan's gate receipts were around just €52.45 million in 2016-17 according to Forbes. While their average attendance went up markedly following the Chinese takeover, the result of that on the balance sheet has yet to be unveiled. The figure is unlikely to have been nearly enough to dissuade UEFA's Financial Control Board from acting with an iron fist. So what next for Milan? The worrying thing for fans is that the club may not even have hit rock bottom yet. The current owners have been struggling for several months now simply to keep up with loan repayments. With interest rates originally at 11%, Lee Yong-ong must pay €380 million by October, or else the club will be repossessed by Elliott. To compel matters, some sources say that interest rates may have soared to as high as 25%. So, the question fans are asking, and indeed another key reason why Milan were banned from Europe, is if Lee Yong-ong is struggling to simply repay this loan, how on earth is he going to be able to fund the club going forward, let alone build a great AC Milan side again? There are multiple parties showing interest in buying the club and ending the Lee nightmare, including American parties headed by Mediacom chief Rocco Commisso and the Chicago Cubs owning Ricketts family. It seems clear that Lee Yong-ong must sell the club simply for it to survive, but what must be impressed upon any potential new owners is the need to learn from the failings of recent years. No more throwing unearned money around. No more promising the earth when the club and the owner cannot afford to sustain it. There will be no quick fixes, no matter how long Milanists have already been made to wait for the club to get back onto an even keel. The lack of European football in the meantime is just another punch in the stomach they will have to grin and bear for now. The great AC Milan as we know it is dead, and it will be a long road to its rebirth.